Now moving on, usually we don't have this part in design sprint at all if it's a B2C problem. But since this use case is a little bit unique, right? You have to think about the industry. You have to think about the business clients Akia potentially may deal with. So we have to bring in other framework. So this is an additional one. It's called PEST. It really stands for stands for political, E stands for economical, S stands for social, and T stands for technological. And then sometimes you also have another E and L. The E stands for environmental and L for legal. Why is that useful? This is just give you a good overview of industry you might dive into. So let's say if someone, I think Grace earlier was mentioning, or someone else mentioned retail, right? Let's say you want Akia to move to retail. Then you may want to perform this analysis yourself and then along with your team on that particular industry. And it doesn't have to be lengthy. You literally can just make this table and draw down some of the key points, key observation of the industry in this dimension. And why is this useful? Because that helps you focus on the factors may appear in any of those dimensions that would matter the most, help you identify the pain points, the values that Akia can provide, as well as sometimes constraints, right? If you enter into a certain industry, for example, legal regulation is really heavy. I'm not sure whether you want to enter that unless the solution itself can address that. And this is also where you will uncover the cost structure or limitation for product innovations for this particular industry will reside. So usually, again, in business school, you may have to learn this over a long time and you have to do this exercise over several weeks. But here we ask you to do it very quickly in like 2 weeks and with your team in a 1 hour-ish fashion. So try to condense to the most important sort of aspects as you can. And then here, I'll give you one example. I'm not going to go through all the bullet points here, but if you want to understand a little bit more concretely, you can take this exercise on the current industry that Akia is at, right? The political threats, for example, some of the, especially I think this actually matters a lot to Airbnb, like the conflicts between local housing routes and the regulation, the business model, the varying types of tax regulation, the wars, the dynamics with Airbnb, right? Economic-wise, also how this interacted with the local housing demand, the opportunities reside there, and the social and technological as well. So in general, you can do the same thing with any industry. The threat, the opportunity. The threat is your constraint. The opportunity is where you could potentially find a problem to solve using Akia's similar tech stack. All right, let's continue. Another important thing to do analysis on is competitor analysis. Although today, Yue Chen gave everyone a pretty good overview of the potential competitors Akia has, I will still encourage all of you, to try to do those competitor analysis yourself, especially on the most sort of like relevant competitor in the industry you want to consider. And then usually there's a framework, quite famous as well, I think, especially in business deal or deal valuation or investor. It's called SWOT. So strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threats. Remember on opportunity threats, we just mentioned for the industry analysis, it also applies to the competitors. So what you want to kind of like gear towards is maybe just a table, write down this is Akia, and these are the competitors in the industry, and just evaluate them on these 4 dimensions and see where potentially Akia can be better, or where actually you can see there's no way Akia can actually have a chance to go against them in that particular industry. So that will also help you solve somewhat the industry problem. If you have an industry and you find out all the competitors are way better than Akia and there's no way Akia can catch up, you may not want to choose that industry. So this is your, I would say, 1 level down confirmation of whether the industry you're choosing is good or not. The second part that is valuable from this exercise is you are going to get some solution ideas from the competitors. I also think Grace earlier mentioned this question. I actually think it's an excellent point. You should survey the competitors. You should get some sort of ideas what they are doing. One of the steps I'm going to talk about later on is called lightning demos. So if the team members, everyone has an idea, what the competitors are doing, which sometimes just screenshots or sometimes just a feature, that is useful to inspire the later steps in this workshop about how you do sketch, how you come up with ideas. Sometimes people will say, I'm too dry, I don't have ideas. Then inspired by this competitor, you may have better ideas. All right, so this is the final deliverable of this phase. I'm kind of give you a very simplistic example called lemon stand. If you really want to innovate on lemon stand, that's kind of the map you want to draw down. On the left, you list your customers, your key players, because remember, this is not B2C problem. This is like B2B or B2B2C problem. So there's different players in the mix. You want to list them right there. So to remind yourself and your teammates what is going on. And then you can also talk about the key competitors in that space. On the right, you want to draw, well, in this case, it will be Google Doc. You just write down your audacious goal, right? And you try to connect from the left to the right. And here where you probably want to also kind of like use Google Slides, just so you build building blocks to see the flow chart of what the user journey is and try to identify that particular or few sort of blocks that you can innovate on. And then underneath, you can have all your sprint questions. And this will become kind of the blueprint for the entire team to conquest in the rest of the weeks, rest of the sessions. So that's why it's important. And don't make it too lengthy, just make it concise. You sometimes use one concept better than a sentence. But the key point is that's your shared context among 7 people in the team. Without that, it will be easy to diverge from your original goal as a team, what you want to do. And then that's really hard to manage over the process. So do this as the first deliverable as a team. All right, so there's a suggest breakdown. I'm not going to go through. Once you come to the session next week, your team lead and yourself can use this as a guidance, like how much time you should spend